The Department of Defense is reportedly forcing soldiers and sailors to sign an NDA about operations in the Caribbean. Just why is the Department of Defense using the same tool that stops people from spoiling Marvel movies to silence U.S. troops? And does it reflect poorly on the actual legal knowledge of the DoD? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. But before we do, you guys know that Strike Gum, the energy drink alternative, is having its fall sale. Buy two, get one free. It's continuing until the end of October, right? So you add 3 items to your cart, right? Trays, packs, 5 packs, and you get one of them free. So go to strikegum.com. There's no promo code. You just do it. So if you've been waiting to try the energy drink alternative, 0 sugar, 90 milligrams of caffeine, veteran owned, made in the USA, no tariffs on this, baby. Get the energy you need to get it done at strikegum.com. Okay. So U.S. military officials are reportedly required to sign NDAs tied to the Latin American mission, according to some sources. Now, this has been pretty weird for a variety of reasons. First off, this is from 3 different U.S. officials. It seems pretty credible. It's also too stupid to have made up. And the reason is that, as even the AP points out, it is highly unusual given that U.S. military officials are already required to shield national security secrets from public view, and comes as lawmakers in Congress say they are being kept in the dark about key aspects of the mission. Now, nobody really knows, well, how many members were forced to sign these NDAs, in part because, well, that's how an NDA works, but also that's how what's called OPSEC works. So here's the thing to understand about what it means to be a service member forward deployed. First off, you have the military and really the government's classified system, right? Then that is a classification system that originates from the president that says that certain information has such serious national security implications that it must be kept secret, and it cannot be disclosed. Not only cannot be told to people verbally, but it can't be put on non-secret media. So for example, even if I didn't tell anyone, let's say I had pictures of a secret U.S. military system that I took on my deployment, and I took those pictures and uploaded them to my personal laptop, that's still leakage. It's leaking classified information. Similarly, you also have things that are more broadly termed OPSEC, or operational security. Now, this is information that is not classified, but the U.S. military prefers not to get out into the public. And it is not subject to the same laws as classified information, but it is still subject to, well, lawful orders, right? So it was not a secret, for example, that my unit was deploying. Obviously, families knew about it, friends knew about it, right? My parents knew months ahead of time, but I was also ordered, hey, don't post about the exact times, the exact size and composition of your unit, the exact places we're going to be transiting, the exact final destination that our unit will be assigned to. All of those things were not classified. Obviously, our family members knew about them, but the unit said don't post them on social media, right? Or I was given a lawful order by my commander, don't post them on social media, don't publicly disclose them, don't disclose that information to total strangers, because even though it isn't classified, it is still considered operationally sensitive that someone like the Taliban could use to aggregate with other information to help tell them, hey, here's when a new unit's going to be in this sector. They might not be as experienced and we should be targeted. Hey, we know that the unit that's been operating in this sector is going to be leaving soon, so maybe we can take advantage of that transition. That is operational security, and it's another layer of protection for operational secrets in the Department of Defense. But what's fascinating about the idea of using an NDA is that an NDA is a legal tool that is used to protect corporate secrets, company secrets. And again, as I was joking, but I'm completely serious. If you work on, let's say, a Marvel movie, and you know the ending of the movie, you are actually often sign an NDA that says, hey, you can't publicly go out and disclose the ending of this movie or this TV show. And that is to preserve the commercial secret, right? Because people watch the TV show to see the surprise ending. And so companies say, listen, it's a proprietary secret about how the TV show ends. So you're going to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And it just says that you promise not to tell this secret, the end of the season finale. And in exchange, usually there's some other kind of gimme, like a bonus or some other sort of thing, right? So it's an agreement. And the strangest part is that, one, a soldier cannot sign, like, there's a bunch of weird stuff. The first is that you don't go to jail for violating an NDA, right? You violate the NDA, and the consequences are usually laid out in your NDA agreement. So it'll be, say, for example, you forfeit a settlement, right? But if you leak classified information, you go to jail, right? And that is not a Trump administration thing. That is not a Biden administration thing. That has been persistent for nearly a century. If you leak classified U.S. military information, intentionally or unintentionally, you could lose your job, and you will absolutely be eligible for prosecution. And people are prosecuted for leaking classified information. I know for a fact people lost their jobs simply for not labeling a CD secret when it contains secret information. And it is not something that is trifled with. And so the idea that this very serious classification system is somehow going to get like trumped by an NDA is itself very strange. And it is troubling for a couple of reasons. One, I think the Department of Defense, it reflects a failure, for lack of a better term, on the part of the Department of Defense to understand the legal authorities, right? And it sort of tracks because, well, there aren't that many JAGs left. The person who would normally say, hey man, an NDA doesn't apply to this and doesn't make any sense and is absolutely trumped by the classification system, well, those people got the boot, right? In February, basically the entire Judge Advocate General Corps got kicked to the curb. Probably because Pete Hegseth thinks they kept saying these things like, oh, you know, your rules of engagement should say not to commit war crimes. Obviously, because the JAG would probably say, hey, man, you haven't proven that these people in these boats are combatants. They're just people committing crimes, and there's no imminent danger to the U.S. So, again, it appears that, even some of the people, for example, 5 days ago, the top Air Force lawyer, the JAG who took over after the previous JAG was fired, they also quit. That's how disturbing whatever's happening is. So there may not be someone with the expertise to say, hey, man, just because when you sexually harassed those women or you got way too drunk at the company party and you made everyone sign NDAs, just because that worked for you then doesn't mean that's going to work for you now. You're not at Fox News. You're the Secretary of Defense. There's other part that I think could be a more innocuous explanation would be if there was some kind of technology being deployed here. I'm thinking like an Anduril system, something where the U.S. government's maybe piloting it, and Anduril says, hey, listen, the capabilities of this are either not classified for some reason, and we as our Anduril policy say you can't tell anyone what you saw in our special new strike drone or our advanced electronic warfare system. Now, that doesn't hold a lot of water because almost always defense tech systems are already classified, right? Like, it'd be like signing an NDA from Lockheed Martin when they developed the B-2 stealth bomber. They were like, dude, yeah, I know. Like, it's a stealth combat aircraft. Like, it's classified. Like, I don't need an NDA to tell me I can't work on this or I can't discuss this. But I think the other thing is that what is more disturbing is that there are exceptions to classified information, right? So it's referred to sometimes as need to know. But one of the things, and this is pointed out by an article actually in an article in the Bulwark that a retired senior commander wrote, where he said, listen, the classified information system does not prohibit soldiers from going to their congressman and saying, hey, I need to get a secure channel because I have to discuss with you something that I think you need to know, because Congress ultimately has oversight over the Department of Defense. And that is a constitutionally required role. It is baked into what it means to be a congressman that you have to oversee the operations to ensure they're in compliance with the law. How can you write laws, if you're Congress, if you don't know what's going on in the executive branch that you fund and legislate? And so Congress, right? Now, I can't walk into a congressman's office and be like, yo, we're building a super advanced AI system and it's ultra classified. There's no ultra classified. It's only top secret. That's as high as it gets, right? But what you can say is say, hey, listen, I'm a DoD personnel. I have concerns that I need to speak to on a secure channel, on a secret channel, about Department of Defense operations. And Congress, if they're worth their salt, are going to say to you, yeah, absolutely, I totally understand. Here's our staffer who has a top secret clearance, and here's a place where you guys can meet and you can discuss your concerns with them, right? And that is protected whistleblower activity. You also have the Department of Defense Inspector General. This was created, again, to receive whistleblower complaints and conduct investigations. And you have a right as a service member to reach out to them. They are part of the Department of Defense, but they do not answer to anyone in the Department of Defense's chain of command. You have a right, even if that information is classified, even if you're working on a classified program, to say, listen, let's say you're building a satellite. If you're a DoD personnel and you go, listen, I think the contractor is systematically defrauding us in this highly classified satellite program. You can go to an inspector general and say, again, I need to do it in a secure channel, a secure space, but I have to tell you what's going on here because something is wrong in this highly classified program. Those are things that are not, those are rights you have that are not restricted by the classification system. An NDA probably doesn't have legally binding authority because, again, because of the First Amendment, right? But an NDA, a Fox News host might think, would stop a soldier from doing that. Where it says, no, you didn't say, it's not leaking classified information. You have a right. You don't have a right to tell anyone about what you're doing here, right? And they may also be trying to scare soldiers to say to them, hey, even when you get out of the military, even if you lose your security clearance, because you signed this NDA, you can't tell anyone ever what you did here. Which is, of course, sounds like the government policing speech, which is exactly what this is, right? Because again, the classification system is a carve-out in freedom of speech because it is essential to national security, right? We all agree that there is no freedom of speech rule to say, hey, here's a map of all the locations of US ICBMs. I'm sorry, you just don't have a right to do that. Hey, here's the exact frequencies that all US spy satellites operate on, right? We all agree, the courts have said, listen, I get it. You've got to protect your country. You need some national security secrets, and the classification system is an effective way to manage that. It is a reasonable restriction on First Amendment rights. But that is not universal, right? It would be absurd for me to say, hey, you can never tell your family ever that you deployed to Afghanistan. That's a stupid, non-national security relevant restriction. And also, again, let's say I was to run for Congress, or I was to advocate and testify in front of Congress and say, listen, these are my concerns about the way the war in Afghanistan was fought. These are my concerns. These are things that happened to me there that I think weren't right. That's a right that I have. And you can't sit there and be like, oh, you can't say those things because it's classified, or you just can't say those things because it's OPSEC. Irrelevant. I still have my First Amendment rights. And so this is the government trying to restrict the First Amendment rights of service members. It's absurd. It's preposterous, right? It's at best duplicative, but I think it's more nefarious. I think it's meant to be coercive. Right? Because remember, the average service member, even a general, right? A general's making $150,000 a year. That is not enough to afford a private lawyer and fight the government. If you were to sit there, again, let's say somebody resigns. We just saw a couple of major flag grade officers resign. And let's say they were to go and say, listen, I'm out of the military and I'm not going to disclose classified information, but the things I was ordered to do were illegal, right? I didn't agree with them. That's why I resigned. That's a right you have as a free American to say those things. And the DoD probably believes that by forcing people to sign NDAs, they're going to prevent them from exercising that First Amendment right. But it's a joke. It isn't real. But the point is not, and this is something common with kind of the New York real estate, Trump dirtbag, Fox News sort of realm, because they've used it before, where even when they know they're going to lose in an NDA battle, like a non-compete, right? Non-competes aren't really all that legal and they don't really hold up in court. But unless you can afford to win a court battle, and a good lawyer is going to be $500 an hour, and a court battle is going to be taking you hundreds of hours. So unless you have 200 or 300 grand to cough up, you're going to say, I'm just not going to say anything. And that's the point here. That's what I think is really going on. I think these NDAs were probably directed towards senior officers. And I think it's in response to some of the resignations, particularly the resignation of the Southcom commander, who basically leaked that he did it because he was being ordered to do things that he found to be illegal. And I think this is damage control by a Department of Defense that is totally out of their depth. All the experts are gone. All the senior folks are gone. What you have left is old Petey Hegseth. And we know that the planning, here's what's so disturbing about this. This reflects a general lack of strategic thinking, right? For example, the U.S. is pulling a brigade from Romania. Even, remember, as the U.S. says they're committed to defending NATO, but their actions say otherwise. And this, I think, is the if you take anything away from what's been going on, take away this, that the U.S. military, right, the White House says, we're tough on Putin, we're cracking down with sanctions, this and that. And maybe that's a little true, but we're simultaneously signaling to both our NATO allies and to Putin himself that the U.S. is not all that sincere about defending Europe, right? And it says that this is part of a force posture review, i.e. where you put your troops, right? And it favors resources for the Western Hemisphere and the Indo-Pacific, right? So China and inexplicably Venezuela, right? And so this, I think, is so troubling because, well, look, guys, is it really worth it to pull a land brigade out of Romania and put them, well, where? Where else do you think they're not going to Taiwan. They're not going to be in Guam or whatever. Like, where do you think they need to be? And if you say, oh, the Western Hemisphere, well, that's a little weird because that would imply that the U.S. military does have plans to conduct a large-scale ground operation, right? A brigade plus in Venezuela, which is crazy. And I think this is a really, again, troubling signal and a troubling trend because, like we said, right now, today, the U.S. military has not made the case that Venezuela is a clear and present danger to the United States, right? They have not disclosed anything. They have not told us how many drugs does Venezuela move into the United States relative to Mexican drug cartels, relative to Chinese exporters. Like, tell us. There's been no case made to the U.S. public about why Venezuela is such a threat, that it's a greater threat than Putin, it's a greater threat than China, that it warrants an aircraft carrier strike group, battalions and battalions of army troops. It doesn't make any sense. And the fact that instead of telling Congress, this is why we think this, right? This is why we think we need a carrier strike group and brigade after brigade of troops to kill onesies and twosies of drug boats, unarmed drug boats, by the way. No one, not even the administration claims that they're armed. It's absurd. And it's more than absurd. It reflects the fact that the administration knows what they're doing is wrong and they just don't want to be held accountable. And they're pulling out all the stops to ensure that that happens. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. Thanks to Alfred Chesky, Alan Knudsen, Christine Schumann, Dan M., Deborah Oppenheimer, and all of our Lieutenant Tier members. I couldn't do it without you guys. I appreciate you all so much, and I'll see you all in the next one. Cheers.